Hi, this is Tim of Watchbox. SIHH 2018, we're with Jaeger Le-Coultre, which has built a palatial recreation of the manufacturer lobby here in the Pal Expo. And we've got a special treat for today. Not precisely a watchmaker, but just as accomplished. You're actually looking at Casafaliano in action. Famed manufacturers of polo boots for royalty, the rich, the famous, the bright and the beautiful, here crafting Faliano straps for Jaeger LeCoultre Reverso watches. Now, as you can see this year, a broad range of Reverso watches will be available with Faliano straps. You're actually looking at Edward Faliano, son of Rodolfo, founder of the house, creating a Reverso strap in real time. He's executing the finishing of the Cordovan right now. You can see the traditional tools that he uses and traditional materials. It's always helpful to have a little bit of water handy. At the same time, you can see how the raw materials eventually turn into finished straps on the 2018 Jaeger LeCoultre Reverso collection. Edward has been here all day, working away within the Pal Expo, and you can see the finished product is a product worth the wait. This is Edward Faliano of Casa Faliano with Jaeger LeCoultre creating Reverso straps from Shell Cordovan at SIHH 2018. We are going to handle the entire Polaris collection, starting with the Charter member. Now, this is the Jaeger LeCoultre Polaris Memovox, a limited edition of 1,000 pieces. This is new for 2018, and it is the anchor of the line. The 1,000 pieces featuring pronounced vintage cues, including the triple crown, the one at 2 o'clock for setting the alarm, the one in the center for the unidirectional, or I should say bi-directional internal bezel, and the one at 4 o'clock used to wind and set the timepiece. Now, the vintage cues here, other than the obvious layout of the case, dial, and crowns, include a dramatically domed box section sapphire. This is common to only 2 models in the line, although all feature a more prominent sapphire. You can see on the Automatic with Date and the Memovox, it's downright domed in tribute to the plexiglass as featured on the original. Now, the other feature that is exclusive to the Automatic with Date and the Polaris Memovox is the vanilla coloration of the indices and hands. Now, that is the nomenclature I'm advised to use by Jaeger LeCoultre. It's not quite a simulated patina, and it's not a modern contemporary white or lime green luminova, but it does have a charming and warm vintage appeal. Now, the watch features a sunray inner dial with a grained hour track. All the indices and hour numerals are applied, and of course you can see in classical fashion there is a bi-directional rotating diving style bezel. So the watch is a diver, 200 meters water resistant. The timepiece features a caliber 956 automatic Memovox internally. You'll also note the presence of a rubber strap, and I should note that across the board the 2018 Polaris line is available on leather, either calf or alligator, available on rubber, and available with bracelets. Now, you can see that the watch features a full deployant clasp. The caseback, also vintage inspired, features a small deviation from the original. You can see the Super Compressor case icon from the original 1968 Polaris, and this was previously inside the case. It was a multi-back case for various reasons of sound transmission and water resistance. Now it's on the exterior of the case back. As you can see, 20 bar water resistant, still passing through the 1,000 hours control. This is a 42 millimeter timepiece in stainless steel, and again, a limited edition of 1,000 pieces. Moving on to the other vintage inspired, or I should say closely vintage inspired reference in the catalog, we're looking at the Polaris Automatic with Date. Now, this is also a 42 millimeter watch in stainless steel. You can see the twin crowns, one for winding and setting the watch and the other for the internal rotating bezel. Once again, this is a dive capable watch, and once again it features the combination of the Super Compressor caseback, 200 meter water resistance, the vanilla coloration of hands, indices, and numerals, as well as the dramatically boxed section sapphire. You'll also note that the lugs of the watch across the board are nicely cropped, relatively short, and sharply downturned. So even though, for example, this watch features a strap with conforming end pieces, it doesn't have a whole lot of tendency to flare, pretty much pulls straight down. Also, you can see equipped with a full deployant clasp. It should be noted that this year, Many references will include rapid release spring bars through the Polaris range. Now you get those on the leather straps. They're not compatible with the rubber or the bracelet, but on the leather alligator or calf, you do get quick release spring bars and a clasp that can be removed without tools, so you can rapidly swap between models, okay? We're going to step down to 41 millimeters for a moment. This is the Polaris Automatic 41 millimeters. You can see it's a little bit distinctly vintage in appearance than the Memovox and the Automatic with the Date. The coloration of the luminescence is more modern. It's a straight white. It still has the sunburst inner dial and the grained hour track with applied indices and numerals. And of course, it does feature the internal rotating bezel. The timepiece actually features a display caseback, and it features a variant of the Jaeger LeCoultre Automatic caliber 898, which you can see at good advantage. The steel watches in the line feature tungsten rotors. The gold watches feature gold rotors. All are free sprung, so it is a sports watch movement architecture. Unidirectional winding with ceramic rotor bearings, very tough. 1,000 hours control. These are water resistant to 10 bar or 100 meters. Now you can see even this entry-level model does include a deployant clasp, and this is a robust calf skin, giving you a sense of the grain and coloration as well as the thickness of the cut used on this model line. And you can also see the quick release spring bars that I mentioned earlier. What I can't communicate, or at least can't communicate visually, is the sheer softness of the strap on the underside. As you can see, made in France, probably by Camille Fournet for Jaeger LeCoultre. This is buttery smooth leather, as good as it gets. Think Hermes, and you've got the general idea. Okay, we're gonna move over to a different look for a moment. I want to show you a quick dial variation so you can get a sense of the dial colors, and the metallic finish of the center dial is more evident when you look at the Polaris Date with the blue coloration. It's rich, it's a medium blue, it's best described as a sort of metallic cobalt at center and a lighter take on navy on the bezel as well as the hour track. Quite handsome. You can see this one also equipped with a calfskin strap. I'm going to jump one more time, give you a different aesthetic. And now you can see the same watch, the same model, the same dial, albeit on the bracelet that can be had with the line. Now again, all models available with rubber strap, leather and calf or alligator, as well as the bracelet. The bracelet, as is traditional with Jaeger LeCoultre since the 1990s, is double deployant with quadruple triggers, and there are 2 micro releases. You can see the notch of the micro release. It has that on both sides of the clasp. And Jaeger LeCoultre tells me that it's the equivalent, if you deploy both, of adding 1 full link. Likewise, if you take them both in, it's the equivalent of subtracting 1 full link. You can see the pin-style construction of the bracelet as well as the contrasting finish satin down the center, polished on the outer periphery. And if you look at it in relief against my white base, you can see that it is robustly aerated to allow the wrist to vent on a hot day. Sweat, oil, moisture, grit being able to escape. Okay, we're gonna do another switch right now. And I'm going to show you the Polaris Chronograph. Now, the Polaris Chronograph, I should clarify, along with the other Polaris models, will be replacing much of what's currently known as the Master Extreme line, including the deep seas. So if it seems like it has a little bit of overlap with existing model lines, rest assured it is going to become more or less the exclusive sports watch offering from Jaeger LeCoultre. So let's talk a little bit about the chronograph. This is caliber 751 manufacture, still 42 millimeters in diameter. You can see how it has the same case profiling as well as the same contrasting finish, with the bevel and high polish accentuating the curvature of the lug. The watch features vintage-inspired rectangular or lozenge-style pushers, and a deliberate decision was made to minimize the impact of the chronograph graphics as well as registers on the dial. They wanted the indices, they wanted the hour track, they wanted the general look of the Polaris to be preserved, and thus you can see outboard a visual substitute for the rotating bezel of the dive versions. You can see a tachymeter scale appropriate for a chronograph. They also decided that a twin register featuring seconds and chronograph minutes would be less disruptive. Now let's take a look at the case back. Deploy both sides. Okay, let me see if I can get it. There we go. Sort of. Okay. Now you can see caliber 751. Believe it or not, this is the first time that Jaeger LeCoultre has issued a watch in which a caliber 750 family member was visible. You can see the column wheel, you can see a richly textured Côte de Genève. The tungsten rotor has been slightly blackened. Again, you've seen this movement in Cartier watches, but you've never seen it in a display case on a Jaeger LeCoultre. This one's also 100 meters water resistant. As you can see, the bracelet similar in construction. There's no difference from the previous Polaris bracelet that we explored. Now I'm going to take you to the top of the line. Pardon some of my pauses. I'm trying to collaborate amicably with my fellow journalists. This is the chronograph in rose gold. You do get a few changes when you go with rose gold. First, you get this unique anthracite dial finish, sunbursted center, grained outer, rose gold hands for center, seconds, minutes, and hours, plus registers. The rose gold watch, and this is important, comes with a rose gold rotor. So you do get that upscale refinement. You can see the same quick release spring bars that are used across the line. This was a decision made by Jaeger LeCoultre, and it was a conscious one, not to go with some sort of proprietary quick release lug system. Now, if you remember the Master Compressor Extremes of the 2000s, they used standard straps. You didn't have to get a custom strap, but if you look at, for instance, the new Cartier Santos, the old Cartier Roadster, the IWC Aquatimers, the Hublot Big Bangs, Ferraris, and Unicos, you need special straps that are both more expensive and remove your option of fitting aftermarket straps to your watch. You still get the option of going aftermarket, and you still get a reasonable purchase price for the strap with the quick release spring bar. Patek does it, Journe does it, and now Jaeger LeCoultre does it. Moreover, it gets a matching double deployant clasp in rose gold. That too can be released. As you can see, push here to remove the clasp. It's easy to swap straps with these watches. This could be described as a variation on Jaeger LeCoultre's 4th generation deployant clasp, or simply the 5th generation. Whether you consider it by design to be 4.4 or generation 5, it does have a reprofiled outer buckle, and it is quite handsome as well as quite substantial, with a curvature to trace the arc of your wrist for good ergonomics. So this is the Polaris Chronograph in rose gold. Okay, we're going to swap one more time. And now we have the mechanical flagship of the range, 44 millimeters in titanium. This is the Polaris Chronograph World Time. So 44, it is the largest. Titanium, it's also the lightest. So though the smallest watch in the collection is 41 millimeters in steel, this watch is lighter than the automatic. You can see there are 24 principal time zones representing 24 cities, and you can also see that there's a small sort of arrow index next to those cities in which daylight savings time is observed. As ever, indices and numerals are applied to the dial. It is a twin register chronograph. Once more, you can see the movement within the case. Tungsten rotors for titanium watches. This one's 100 meters water resistant, which is the minimum for any of the new Polaris watches. This is the blue dial in titanium with a calfskin strap, and we're going to go and check out the other aesthetic available, which is the black dial. Now, this is also titanium, opaline or frosted hour track with the sunburst center. Both of these watches are handsome, and I have to say, though there's been some controversy on my Instagram about the size of the watches, they're really both quite reasonably sized. On the wrist, you would swear the watch is a 42. Eyes closed, you'd swear it's a 39 or a 40 because it is so light. Now, the watch comes with a double deployant clasp. As you can see, the double deployant clasp body is actually made of stainless steel for durability, and like other strap-borne members of the Polaris class of 2018, features the quick release spring bars. The watch is handsome, well made, and the chronograph architecture with a column wheel and a vertical clutch is both crisp to operate, and there's no jump or stagger to the seconds hand. Plus, you can operate the chronograph continuously with no additional wear and tear due to the vertical clutch architecture. This and the Polaris chronograph feature twin mainspring barrels and a 65-hour power reserve, and though they do not feature dates, they do retain the hacking or stop seconds function of the underlying caliber 750 architecture. Both are also free-sprung with laser-welded hairsprings and unidirectional winding systems on ceramic rotor bearings for longer maintenance intervals as well as greater durability in practice. I'm Tim with Jaeger LeCoultre 2018, and this is the new Polaris sports watch collection. We're here at Audemars Piguet in 2018. At SIHH, AP may have the strongest across-the-board group of novelties, a mixture of tradition and some forward-thinking design, and one must say, the most traditional of finish. The timepiece that you're looking at right now is the Audemars Piguet Royal Oak Offshore Tourbillon Chronograph. The timepiece, 44 millimeters, entirely in black ceramic. I can't overemphasize the difficulty of achieving the double finish you see here. I'll polish it so you can see it to greater advantage, but it's the combination of the satin finishing and the polished finishing that creates contrast and avoids a monolithic aesthetic. This requires diamond tools, but it is done in traditional fashion, so though you get virtually indelible ceramic, you get it with a level of artistry that you would get with titanium, with stainless steel, with precious metals from Audemars Piguet. Now the watch, 44 millimeters, contains a caliber 2936 that is entirely open-worked, an impressive power reserve for a power-intensive complication like the tourbillon. 72 hours, manually wound. You can see it is a traditional column wheel chronograph, and once again, I apologize for my fingerprints. I have been all over these watches, but the timepiece features a traditional column wheel architecture with a lateral clutch, beautifully executed. This is caliber 2936, 28 pivot jewels, and 299 parts. You can see it's beautifully executed. All of the levers are beautifully satin grained. The edge of everything that has an edge with beautiful rounded anglage, a mass of darkened metal and ruby pivots. It's also a chronograph and thus highly practical. While it is 20 meters water resistant and thus not your first choice for diving, Audemars Piguet has those too this year. This is the 44 millimeter Audemars Piguet Tourbillon Chronograph from the Royal Oak Offshore Collection. Now I showed you the beige accented variant, and now we're looking at the blue accented variant of the Audemars Piguet Royal Oak Offshore Tourbillon Chronograph, a timepiece 44 millimeters in black ceramic that is accented subtly across each version. This one features beautiful cyan blue accents for the registers for chronograph minutes and seconds, as well as accented hands. The watch features a manufacturer caliber 2936 with 28 pivot jewels, 299 components, and the functionality of a chronograph as well as a tourbillon. Now, if you look at the front of the watch, you can see the specular finish of both the tourbillon carriage and the tourbillon bridge, sometimes known as black polish, sometimes known as poly noir in its native Francais. You can see this is an open-worked watch, so technically it's the Royal Oak Offshore Tourbillon Chronograph open-worked. A limited series, though Audemars Piguet isn't going to hold itself down to a specific number. You can see it's a traditional column wheel lateral clutch chronograph with the levers and the horns of the chronograph interacting with the column wheel, and the lateral clutch, beautifully driven off the fourth wheel of the main drivetrain, moving in and out at center. Now it's 20 meters water resistant, so though it's highly scratch resistant in ceramic and quite light on the wrist, it's not necessarily an aquatic watch, but you have a Royal Oak Offshore diver for that. 72-hour power reserve, tourbillon chronograph, ceramic case, and blue accents. This is the Audemars Piguet Royal Oak Offshore Tourbillon Chronograph open-worked, caliber 2936. You're looking at the big piece, the flagship of this year's Audemars Piguet offerings. This is the Audemars Piguet Royal Oak RD number 2, research and development, technically a prototype. It presages something that may be seen in production in the not so distant future. Now there are a couple of highlights here. First and foremost, what you can't see, and that's the heft of this watch in the hand, entirely in platinum. Nevertheless, the watch is record-breaking in its profile. The standard Audemars Piguet Royal Oak Jumbo, the 15202, is 8.3 millimeters thick. This watch in total 6.3 millimeters, and that in spite of being an automatic winding perpetual calendar with moon phase. Let me see if I can take a little bit more of my grime off of this beautiful sapphire crystal. Now the watch is designed with a few nods to history. First and foremost, the 1955 perpetual calendar with the first ever leap year phase indicator. Now that ancestral model featured its moon phase at 12 o'clock, and thus so too does this one with photorealistic moon phase. You can see the watch also features the signature tapisserie cut on a pantograph machine, beautifully galvanized blue. Let's talk a little bit of tech here. The movement inside is Audemars Piguet caliber 5133. Now it's based on the essential architecture, as you can see, of the 2120 movement. So you can see the same annular rotor borne on 4 ruby roller bearings, skeletonized rotor, 40-hour power reserve, beating away at a stately traditional 19,800 vibrations per hour. This is an all-timer among bass calibers, but it's not the complete story, because in order to make a movement less than 3 millimeters thick and a watch less than 6.5 millimeters thick, the total is 6.3, it was necessary to innovate in ways the company hitherto never had. Thus, the company, established in 1875, has only ever issued 2 R&D models, this being the second, with production intent but nevertheless a prototype serial number. I have to say that the watch, 41 millimeters across, is almost limpet-like on the wrist. Again, the slim profile of this watch cannot be overemphasized, and its mass in full platinum with matching bracelet and clasp, impressive. Intellectually impressive, artistically impressive. This is a watch that a fortunate few may be able to wear in the near future. For now, this is the Audemars Piguet R&D number 2, the world's thinnest automatic perpetual calendar. Since I know some will ask, how does the Audemars Piguet Royal Oak R&D number 2 perpetual calendar wear? Well, you can see on my 16 centimeter circumference wrist, it's still broad at 41 millimeters. It wears like a larger watch. The timepiece is immense lug-to-lug at over 52 millimeters for the 41 millimeter case, and I say immense because you wouldn't expect that of a watch so flat it's almost flush with my skin when buckled down. Nevertheless, the feeling of platinum, case, bezel, bracelet, and clasp is incredibly impressive. Technically impressive, physically massive. We're looking at Jumbo. A novelty for this year, technically reference 15202 IP. This is the one you've all been talking about, a combination of the traditional 39 millimeter case, 8.3 millimeters thick, with platinum bezel, and the debut for 2018 is a titanium bracelet on the original Jumbo. Now clearly there's more to it than that, because you can see the dial is anything but the normal, though the blue galvanized is generally the rarest of Jumbo dials. This is something else, a distinct gradient from almost cobalt at its center to blackened at its outer edges. This is the petite tapisserie turned on a pantograph the old-fashioned way, but with a coloration that is entirely specific to this model. It's going to be a rare piece. Rest assured that if you're not already on the waiting list, you're going to be sitting for a while. A boutique exclusive, it's important to note, so make friends with your Audemars Piguet factory store. The timepiece, featuring a variant of the caliber 2120, I believe this is caliber 2121 because of the date, featuring the skeletonized golden winding rotor in a beautiful rose gold tone. Of course, an annular winding mass. It looks like a single-sided rotor. It actually runs the full circumference of the movement, and it's borne on 4 ruby rollers. 40-hour power reserve. This one, a heritage movement that is created and finished in-house by Audemars Piguet. The 40-hour power reserve operates in tandem with a charmingly anachronistic 19,800 vibration per hour beat rate, an ultra-thin caliber, an ultra-thin watch, and yet rendered like you've never seen before. This is the 15202 IP with platinum bezel, gradient tapisserie dial, and a titanium case and bracelet. You're looking at the wrist shot we all waited for. This is the new Jumbo 15202 IP in platinum and titanium on my 16 centimeter wrist. So if you've wondered, now you know. And I've got a scram per AP. Thanks again. This is Tim at SIHH 2018 with the wrist shot of the day. Hi, I'm Tim of Watchbox at SIHH 2018 with Grubel Forsey. What we're looking at here is perhaps the flagship novelty of the entire show, not just the brand, the Earth GMT, 45.5 millimeters in white gold. The watch is part of a series of 33 that will be offered. It's the subject of no fewer than 3 separate patents, so let's see where all that brain power went. Now, the watch has 3 separate displays of time on the dial. You can see the primary dial, luminescent, absolutely no conservatism here, with a smoked sapphire hours track. There's a second display that you can read at what would conventionally be 2 o'clock on the dial, driven by the GMT pusher on its flank. Grubel Forsey is nothing but, if not user-friendly and readable. And then you have a 360-degree blue globe that will show you northern and southern hemispheres. On the reverse side, you have world time. Now, it's important to note it gives you world time in both the regions that feature daylight savings or summertime and those that do not, and they're color coded such that you can see the white ones show you where daylight savings is observed and it's readable at the center of the dial, and then outboard you have the 24-hour format with black indicating those that do not observe daylight savings time. Now the watch itself is approximately 16.18 millimeters thick, but it's more wearable than you might expect despite being almost 46 millimeters in diameter thanks to the tightly downward turned white gold lugs. It's actually an excellent ergonomic proposition because of a case back that's broad and principally flat. Now you do get an awful lot of refinement for your money with a full deployant clasp, anything but an anonymous generic piece. You can see this is expressly made for Grubel Forsey, paired with a beautiful and substantial alligator leather strap, black with a monotone stitch. Now it's important to talk a little bit about the watch. 3 patents. Let's talk about the topography. Twin mainspring barrels, manually wound. The watch beats away at 21,600 vibrations per hour, and in a refinement that should be standard in the watch industry, it features a decoupling device inside one of the serially mounted mainspring barrels to prevent accidental overwinding despite being a manually wound piece. Now you can see there is a power reserve at what would conventionally be 3 o'clock on the dial, 72 hours, and just beneath it you can see the poly noir or specular finish of the full balance bridge over a balance that's inclined characteristically at Grubel Forsey's canted angle of 30 degrees. Watchmakers and watchmaking theory have determined that 30 degrees is the most common angle of a wristwatch on the forearm, thus the logic of the 30-degree angle. Now it also takes circuits of 24 seconds, so you can see it's actually twice the speed of a conventional tourbillon, and for good measure, it's free sprung to make it resistant to shock-induced timing deviation. Now, of course, there is also a stopworks included, and that was just brought into play. The timepiece, easy to read, user-friendly, and incredibly deep. You can see the depth of the movement, approximately 10 millimeters, makes it almost like gazing into a maze of high horology. You see sapphire, you see rhodium, you see what are effectively Mysore or nickel copper bridges made of nickel, copper, and zinc, and beautifully frost finished with a mirrored anglage. Every standard of finish of traditional horology, plus a few you may not associate with high horology, are included. I would be remiss not to talk about the use of synthetic sapphire. It helps to make the 3D globe entirely visible, including in profile, and it also provides a beautiful combination of box section sapphire with a domed profile at its terminus on the top. Again, visibility is one of the keystones of Grubel Forsey, along with user-friendliness. The watch is big, beautiful, bold, and again, with only 33 being made in white gold, it is destined to remain rare. The flagship of Grubel Forsey for 2018, this is the Earth GMT. Grubel Forsey. This is the Differential d'Égalité. Now, the watch is a novelty in many respects. You can see aesthetic as well as engineering, and this is a production piece in prototype form. Remember, this may not be completely representative of what makes it to users' hands, but it's very close. Proto number 3, let's go. Okay, the watch is 44 millimeters in white gold. It'll be built in a series of 33 pieces, and the timepiece is actually reasonably slim at 15.3 millimeters, much of that due to the expensive box section sapphire, beautifully domed and rounded. That's how you know time and effort was put in. Along with the differential finish of the flanks, you can see alternately polished and satin finish, and not in just one direction. Vertical satin finish of the case band and a circumferential satin finish of the case back. Of course, you get deluxe appointments in terms of strap and buckle, but this one's all about constant force, and to that end the caliber here will run for 60 hours with constant amplitude due to the use of a spherical differential that acts as a constant force device. Now obviously this is not the first constant force device to find its way into a wristwatch. Fusee found their way from first clocks and then later pocket watches, but they're imprecise, they're inexact, and with so many moving parts, they're also inefficient. Remontoir d'égalité, whether a linear spring or a spiral, will create uneven pulses during the discharge of energy in quantized form to the escapement. So how do you make it constant? You do it with a spherical differential. Now the movement features twin mainspring barrels in series, manually wound, 72, well, it's a 60-hour power reserve, at which point it will actually stop itself, but it could, in theory, run longer, and that's the key. The timepiece is beyond requirements in every respect. Now, the timepiece also features an angled balance in characteristic Grubel Forsey fashion, the idea being that in addition to the differential and its constant force effect, you also have an angled balance. According to watchmaking theory, the most common angle on a wrist is 30 degrees, and hence the angle of the balance. Now, you also note a unique bridge on the caseback, and that is part of the stop seconds zero reset mechanism. The watch is all about precision, and you cannot have a precise watch that cannot be set precisely. Hence, not only does the balance stop itself, but the second scale, which is a deadbeat second for more precise reading, will also reset itself to the index at 60. Now you can see the watch is immaculately finished. A few more technical details before we move on. The twin mainspring barrels in series also feature a decoupler, so rare in the manual wind watch category. You cannot accidentally overwind the timepiece. It's a 3 Hz beat rate, and as you can see, it is both free-sprung for precise regulation and resistant to shock and vibration, and blessed with an overcoil architecture, which in addition to the differential and the angle of the balance, helps to ensure concentric beating and thus greater accuracy. It's a layered effect, creating chronometer levels of accuracy, and there's plenty of aesthetic value as well. As you can see, the nickel copper or Mysore bridges, beautifully frost finished with immaculate mirrored anglage. The movement is deep and thus pleasing. You look into this movement rather than at it. Now, it's also a practical timepiece, so robustly luminescent. It's an easy timepiece to see in any light, bright, low, or no. Grubel Forsey timepieces are designed to be user-friendly, and they're also fairly easy to wear. It's worth going back to the shape of the lugs. You can see how they turn downward almost 90 degrees with respect to the sweep of the case band. Thus, even on my 16 centimeter circumference wrist, I can easily wear this 44 millimeter timepiece. This will be a series of 33 pieces in white gold. This is the new for 2018 Gruebel Forsey Differential d'Égalité. We're looking at the Double Balancier, the double balance. This one is a cerebral timepiece. Now, we first saw the watch in a different metal, in a different aesthetic in 2015. If you can imagine the Philippe Dufour duality that went to college and received an advanced degree, that is the double balance from Grubel Forsey. Now, the watch is easy to wear. Let's start with the basics. 43 millimeters across the round of the case. The timepiece is just over 13.3 millimeters thick, and you'll note how the lugs turn down sharply, almost 90 degrees with respect to the case band. Let's talk about exterior appointments first. A deluxe rose gold double deploying clasp. Grubel Forsey does not skimp when it comes to rich appointments, and the strap is one of the softest and most substantial you'll ever encounter. Case finish, polished dome-style bezel, polished lugs on their flanks and hoods, polished caseback, and a vertical satin finish, as you can see, to the case band itself. It has sensuous compound curves. It's poetry in rose gold. Now, the aesthetic of the watch also changes internally, as we now have a gold-based but black anthracite dial. The timepiece featuring Grubel Forsey's characteristic traditional finish with a modern take. But let's talk about the movement first. Twin mainspring barrels, running in series. They actually feature a decoupler such that you cannot accidentally overwind this manual wind watch. That is all too rare, and as you can see in traditional fashion, train jewels have been set in chaton. Now it beats away at 3 Hz times 2, the timepiece with its 72-hour power reserve, powering twin balances and twin escapements. Now, according to watchmaking theory, 30 degrees is the average angle of a watch on the wrist, thus both balances inclined in 30 degrees but in different planes. This helps to equalize the action such that when one is in any given position, it will run relatively quicker with respect to gravity, and the other will slow down due to gravitational effects. So they tend to cancel each other out on that basis alone. Now you add a differential. There's a differential between them that helps to average out the error of the two, and then there is actually a metric display between them that is the display of the differential action that makes it tangible to the human eye. Thus, we wind up with watches that feature differential planes of balances, overcoils to promote concentric beating, and a differential to equal out their error. Very precise. Now, the timepiece also has incredible depth to it. As you can see, approximately just a little bit over 8 millimeters of total movement depth, so you don't look at this movement so much as you look into it. Now, it's also robustly practical, luminescent, and easy to see in any light. The watch is user-friendly as well as eye-friendly. Now, the timepiece features a combination of traditional finish. You can see it in the anglage, you can see it in the poly noir of the continuously rounded specular finished balance bridges. Also note that the balances are free-sprung for greater resistance to shock and vibration. You'll also note unusual finishes such as the distinctive quasi-industrial frosting that's evident in all Grubel Forsey timepieces. Now, what sets this one apart may be its conservatism. It's considered to be one of the most outstanding and at the same time least LeCoultre of Grubel Forsey watches. Simple by their standards, also muted by their standards. This is for the more conservative Grubel Forsey buyer. It's also considered an appealing point of entry to Grubel Forsey ownership, although, as ever, Grubel prefers to speak about value, not price. And I have to say, in this echelon of horology, that's downright refreshing, just like their watches. Hi, this is Tim at Montblanc for 2018. You're looking at the Montblanc 1858 chronograph tachymeter. Now, if you recognize this sunburst green dial from Montblanc's only watch of 2017, you're absolutely correct. But whereas you could not buy that one, or at least not more than one, 100 examples of this serial production piece will be offered. Unlike the bronze, this one is in stainless steel, the Prince of Metals. Beautifully finished and in a 40mm size that almost anyone can wear. This marks the entry into mainstream watch sizes for the venerated Montblanc Villeray collection. Now, the Villeray watches, built by the company formerly known as Minerva, and you can still see their signature on the movement, are exquisitely finished. Now, this isn't the 1629 oversized chronograph caliber seen in the 44 and 47mm 1858 watches. This is the caliber 1321, originally created in 1921. It is a mono pusher, and I'll demonstrate that, a mono pusher column wheel chronograph with a 50-hour power reserve beating away at a stately 18,000 vibrations per hour, 50 hours of power reserve manually wound, and impressively 100 meters water resistant, stainless steel 40mm, Montblanc Villeray caliber, green sunburst style with exquisite cathedral style hands, all in stainless steel. 100 looking at both versions of the Montblanc 1858 compass mono pusher pocket watch chronograph. Now you can see this example in rose gold that we haven't investigated before features a obsidian dial, same 24-hour calibration in a rose gold case this time. Both watches can be worn as pendants on chains, conventional pocket watches. They can be worn as wrist watches, and they can be set up as table clocks. Now, while we covered the titanium version with the Dumoterit dial, the obsidian is new to the channel, as is the extraordinary bund-style strap designed to make this 60mm titanium or rose gold watch wearable as a wristwatch. This thing is like Bane's mask. This is so over the top. You have to love it. Twin Ardian pin buckles to hold a 60mm watch on your wrist. Both are limited edition pieces, both powered by the Montblanc caliber 1624 that displays time in a 24-hour format. We're actually going to take a look at the rose gold example now, sitting in the bund strap, fully made up for your wrist. That may be the craziest wristwatch of SIHH 2018. This is Montblanc for 2018, the 1858 mono pusher chronograph pocket watch with compass. Wear it as a pendant pocket watch, wear it as a wristwatch, set it up as a desk clock. Hi, this is Tim of Watchbox at SIHH 2018. We're here with Moser Cie. This is the Pioneer Center Second. As you can see, the watch is reasonably sized for a large sports watch, 42.8mm. It's actually quite slim in profile, and that's where you note that the characteristic recessed lug profiles of Moser have been used to create a tonal contrast. In fact, the watch itself is a bit of a materials hybrid, featuring a capped titanium structure, so it's rose gold cap on top of a titanium core, which helps the watch to actually feel light and wieldy, almost like ceramic on the wrist. Now you can see something you may not have expected is the immense domed sapphire, which you can't really see in the profile shots online, but also the quality of the strap that's fitted, and the fact that it can pull straight down. Unlike so many straps on sports watches, it doesn't have any built-in virtual flare. supple and fluid. It's also nicely vented on the underside, so it can aggress against the skin while not trapping oil, heat, or sweat. You can see a nicely complemented, customized pin buckle for easy on-the-fly adjustments. The dial is upscale with applied rose gold indices, polished and faceted, fully luminescent. It is a sports watch after all, and you can see that the fume-style dial, which I'm told amounts to something like 70 to 80% of Moser watch sales, is present and correct, with its gorgeous sunburst style and its gradient shading. Turn the watch over, you can see what is known as the HMC 230. Now, it's a 3-day automatic winding caliber with a number of features that are characteristic of Moser. It features their platform escapement that can lift out for quicker servicing, but you'll notice within the escapement itself, there's a free-sprung balance, so it's robust as a sports watch should be, takes and holds precise regulation in the face of bumps and disruptions. Also, you'll note the dual-anchored structure of the balance bridge for still more bracing against impact and blows. This is the characteristic finish that you'll note on many Moser movements with sort of double-scrolled Côte de Genève. 120 meters water resistant, so you never need to take it off. This is the Moser Pioneer Center Second at SIHH 2018. We're making a second pass on a watch I consider one of the best in show, and probably the best dress watch overall. It is the Moser Endeavor Flying Hours. Now let's start with the titular complication. It's a take on the star wheel, but it's not a star wheel. For one thing, the hours don't move, unlike a star wheel. Let me explain why you see two numbers at the same time. Because 10 minutes prior to the turn of the hour, relative to the hour disc that's currently showing, you will see both the succeeding and the preceding hour. And then, as it continues, roughly 10 minutes after, it will lapse, and you'll see only the current hour. So let me show you that one more time. As we approach 10 minutes to the turn of the hour, you can see the 11 appears, and then approximately 10 minutes after, you can see how the 10 disappears. Now, it works very simply. Over a 12-hour period, you have 4 discs, or 3 discs, I should say. Each of the 3 discs has 4 numerals, thus 12 hours in the day. There's a sapphire scale featuring radial minutes in a beautiful tri-spoke arrangement at center, and then you have an incredible blue fume dial that's a signature of Moser. Something like 80% of their production is the fume dials. Beautiful funky blue, as they call it. Now, the Endeavor case, I can't overemphasize that it is a sensuous, fluid, almost molten metal profile with a sort of convex curvature to the bezel, and then there's a camber from side to side. It's actually cambered, the whole case, rounded from the top to the edges. You can see how there are concave lug profiles, not just polished, but there's a beautiful satin finish and vertically arrayed satin finish at the mid case. So the takeaway here is that this is a complex shape. You can see that even the height of the bezel itself is not constant. It's fluid, it's flowing, there's nary a straight line or an angle on this case. Now, turning it over, the watch features a 3-day power reserve. It's an HMC 200 base, so that is their 3-day automatic caliber, free sprung, with, as you can see, and I may as well show you, free sprung with a full balance bridge for shock resistance. Now, it also features the platform escapement that pulls out for faster and easier servicing. Now, that is the base movement. HMC 200. The whole movement is called the C806, and that's because the modular complication was created by Moser's sister company, Audemars, the two being owned by the MELB holding firm run by the Mille family. Now, this watch is handsome in white gold, 42 millimeters. The timepiece is actually remarkably slim at about 12.2, so although it's complicated, automatic and a flying hour, it is not terribly thick. The timepiece, as you can see here, is featured on an unusual choice of strap. It's a kudu, and if you're wondering, that is an East African antelope. Beautiful and supple, it's also minimally treated and wonderfully raw. This is the H. Moser Cie Endeavor Flying Hours, 60 pieces, all sold out at SIHH 2018. Now, this watch actually debuted last year at SIHH, 30 pieces in white gold, and as you can see, quite ornate. This is known as the H. Moser Cie Heritage Moon, so technically part of the Heritage Collection, one of Moser's 4 core lines. The watch is just over 42.2 millimeters in diameter and just over 12 millimeters thick, which is remarkable considering the complication. More of that in a moment. You can see the watch actually stretches back aesthetically to the ancestral Moser watches sold during the 19th century, the 1800s. You can see the sort of wire-style lug punctuated by what is known as a flanqué caseband, guilloché in the traditional rose lathe fashion, subsequently enameled and fired. You can see how it adds nuance, texture, and differential shading to a caseband that is also sensuously curved from top to bottom and lengthwise, moving to the crown itself. Note the vintage profile, oversized when viewed head-on, slightly flat when viewed from overhead. The watch is all about craft arts, and you can see that recapitulated in the dial, which is grand faux enamel. Now, this is beautiful white and thick, and as you can see, highly florid in its style with a few hidden secrets. Now you can see at center there's a small 24-hour hand that's hidden amongst the palm or pear style primary hands. The watch features a traditional railroad style seconds track outboard with stylized Roman numerals. The moon phase, I'm told, is accurate to over 1,000 years in contrast to the industry standard of approximately 122, or in the lesser example, approximately 2 years and 7 months. Turning the watch over, it's powered by a manual wind caliber with a 7-day plus power reserve, caseback power reserve scale. You can see the unique double-crested Côte de Genève employed by Moser, as well as twin jewels set in screw-fixed chaton, almost a tribute to pocket watch heritage, of which Moser has quite a bit. You'll also note the three-quarter style of the bridge, reminiscent of a pocket watch. And if the watch has a vintage association that I could particularly pin down, there's almost a sense of Russian 19th century aristocracy, the most decadent court in Europe as it was once known. Now the balance features a platform style with a full-anchored balance bridge, a Breguet-style overcoil to promote concentric beating at any orientation relative to gravity. Beats away at a very stately 18,000 vibrations per hour, so it's easy to see and easy to appreciate. The balance has a large polar moment to make up for the slower beat rate. Now you can see the escapement, just barely, but you can see the anchor and the escape wheel are actually fashioned out of gold, and naturally this free-sprung dual-anchored balance bridge structure with the balance, the whole escapement lifts out for easier modular servicing of the caliber. The timepiece is part of the Heritage Collection, one of the 4 cardinal collections of H. Moser Cie. 30 pieces crafted. This is H. Moser Cie at SIHH 2018. Now we're looking at a watch that is new for this year, and it's a flagship complication. This is from the Heritage Collection. It's the Heritage Flying Tourbillon. So let's start with the basics. Flanque enamel case band. Just like last year's moon phase, it is rose lathe cut to create the texture in the white gold, and then the enamel is cooked onto the top, translucent so you can see the texture. It adds a handsome recurring motif as well as tonal variation that breaks up the flank of the white gold case. Now the case, as with last year's moon, is about 42.2 millimeters, but far thinner in profile. The lugs are designed to evoke vintage timepieces, and Moser does have a formidable pocket watch legacy, so in many respects this watch almost feels like a pocket watch from the 19th century, adapted for wrist use. Grand faux enamel dial with a wonderfully thick disc. You can see it's beautifully white, glossy and rich, almost like a piece of liquid surface into which you could plunge your finger, and it's enticing in more ways than one, with a traditional railroad track outboard for the minutes, stylized Roman numerals. You can see that the hands are pear style and beautifully cobalt blued. Now, the flying tourbillon is a highlight. As you can see, it keeps no secrets. A beautiful flying structure with no top bridge. It's also free-sprung, so it does feature some modern technology amidst the classicism. Now you'll note just how beautifully evacuated and visible the escapement is as it sits side saddle on the tourbillon cage to minimize its polar moment as well as its outcropping and effect on the balance of the structure. Now you can also see the beautiful toothed track along which it drives itself. Turning the watch over, you can see this is a very practical everyday complication. Automatically driven, virtually everything you see, save the pivot jewels, is created by Moser or its sister company, Precision Engineering. They do make small parts, which is exceptional even for a large firm. For a small one, it's rather unheard of, to the point that they actually make parts for a lot of larger brands you may have heard of. Golden rotor, beautifully double finished with a combination of directional grain and a frosted center. You'll also note that the large mainspring barrel is set in a basically screw-fixed chaton, the chaton setting, giving it a little bit of air de famille to the Moser pocket watches of the 19th century. If there's anything I could compare this to, it's a pocket watch adapted for the wrist, and I've often paid reference to the Russian imperial court, to which Moser was a watchmaker in the classical era. It feels like something decadent, 19th century, and Romanov. It's beautiful, it has emotional pull, and being German-Swiss, you also have a level of reliability and serviceability that you'll never find in a vintage watch. This is the H. Moser Cie Heritage Flying Tourbillon at SIHH 2018. With a piece of a Moser watch, this is how Moser uses a limited space to create a large date on its venturer, Big Date. As you can see, there's a top disc and there's an underlay. And in order to sequence the months, they're superimposed, with the upper disc featuring 1 through 15 and the lower disc featuring the remainder. You'll also note that it is bi-directional. And if you want to know what this looks like in practice, here is the venturer Big Date. This is Moser Cie at SIHH 2018. Now, it's easy to get confused when viewing profile shots on the internet between the Endeavor case and the Venturer case. The difference is crystal clear when you see them in person, and a comparative study is warranted. So let's talk briefly about the Endeavor. The Endeavor is best described as fluid. You can see that it has nary a right angle and precious few straight lines. The recesses of the lugs are deep with a rich compound curve. You can see they're of high polish and they contrast with a vertically satin finished flank about the crown. You'll also note how the concave bezel is not just concave in the fashion of some Patek references, but it has unequal height. It's actually higher at 6 o'clock and at 12 o'clock than it is along the case band. And you'll note the watch has a pronounced camber from end to end. Now, you'll also note that there's a minimally domed profile to the Sapphire. Remember that because we're going to see a contrast with the Venturer. Okay, here's the Venturer. The first thing you notice is that the bezel is minimized. It's quite thin. It's almost like a silvered halo about the funky blue dial on this Venturer Big Date. So let's turn it over. Now you can see the contrast in the profile of the crystal. It is immense, rounded, almost bubble-like, and you can see just how small but regularly shaped and convex the bezel is. Now, you still have the signature Moser concave-style lug flanks, but they're a little bit less complex, a little bit more broad and sweeping and rounded and inset, and therein lies the real difference. You can see the Endeavor case is a bit more rounded, a bit more fluid, a bit more intricate, with a different shape to the bezel and a less domed sapphire. The Venturer, with less emphasis on the regularly shaped convex bezel, that huge domed sapphire, and some distinctions in the profiling of the case. You'll also note, if you look at the case back sapphire, that there is some camber to the Endeavor's case back sapphire, whereas the Venturer is a little bit more flattened and broad, almost like a Broncard from end to end across its case back. So now you know the difference between an Endeavor and a Venturer case here at Moser Cie. Hi, I'm Tim with Watchbox at SIHH 2018. We are with Richard Mille, and we're looking at the RM7-01. Now, this watch is a standout because it's a world premiere, the first ever setting of gems in ceramic. You can see the black ceramic in conjunction with the rose gold forming a hybrid case. It's worth mentioning up front how this is achieved. First, the channeling is created by etching into the ceramic. It's actually milled and drilled to fit a cradled, brilliant cut diamond. Now, the way this is done is the gem is first set in a cradle of gold, which is then nestled into the channel. Now, this is the smallest Richard Mille woman's watch. It's approximately 45.66 millimeters from end to end, not including a little bit of flare of the strap. And across, it has a width of approximately 31.4, not inclusive of the crown. The crown, by the way, beautifully set. Now, the timepiece features a paved center dial. It is luminescent, so this is a true sports watch. You can view it in just about any light thanks to the indelible qualities of the sapphire and the ceramic. It's designed for long-wearing durability. Horology is not neglected. As you can see, this is the CRMA2 automatic movement, which you can see is both, if I can get my focus under control, is both free-sprung and equipped with a full balance bridge. Both features robustly shock-resistant. It is not the Pablo Micdano, nevertheless, it is solidly constructed and can take more knocks than a conventional ladies' watch. A sporting watch in the Richard Mille tradition. You can see this combination of gold and ceramic, diamonds and sapphire, beautifully executed in the iconic tonneau shape. This is the Richard Mille RM7-01 at SIHH 2018. You're looking at the Richard Mille flagship novelty for 2018. This is the RM53-01 Pablo Micdano, a polo-specific shock-absorbing watch that features both extended power reserve tourbillon and nearly indestructible packaging. Let's talk first about what you're getting. Well, outside is TPT carbon fiber, which is both robustly anti-shatter, that is shatter-resistant, and almost impossible to scratch. Effectively an indelible material like sapphire ensures the watch is both feather-light and incredibly robust. Now, the bare case dimensions are not inclusive of the crown, 44.5 millimeters across
and from edge to edge, the lug-to-lug dimension is effectively 50 millimeters within hundredths of an inch, so we're going to call it 50 lug-to-lug. I can tell you in the hand, the watch almost disappears. On the wrist, I would guess it's a 30 millimeter round watch because it is so light and wieldy. But let's talk about what makes this watch truly distinct from previous efforts. If you remember the original 2012 Pablo Micdano, the RM53, then you remember it was a dramatically cowled tungsten carbide tourbillon piece that basically protected itself against shock with extreme and ultra-dense metals, as well as very small apertures for viewing the time and the tourbillon. This watch reclaims the iconic Richard Mille tonneau case with a distinct switch in material composition. Though you can't see it, the crystal is effectively 2.4 millimeters thick and constructed in the same fashion as a laminated Mercedes S-Class window or even armored glass. A single piece of sapphire is taken, and then to avoid continuous runs through granular patterns, the back is superimposed over the front, and between them, a polymer layer is seamlessly laminated in. Note, you can't see any of this in person. The result is that you can strike the crystal with a polo mallet, with a hammer, with a sledge or a pile driver, and effectively create nothing more than a crack. It's virtually shatter resistant. Even as a complete spider web of fractures, it is not going to give way because of the laminated structure. Now that's part one. Part two is the fashion in which the tourbillon is actually protected from shock up to a rated level of approximately 5,000 G. Now you can see the suspension of the movement via two sets of pulleys. There are 10 pulleys in total, and there are two independent steel wires that bear the movement in high tension and suspension. There is a titanium frame outboard that acts as the brace for the movement, and then there are twin main plates flanking the guts of the movement, front and back, in grade 5 titanium and blackened. 19 pivot jewels. The highlight of the movement is the fact that it's both shock resistant, and the tourbillon, beating away at 3 Hertz, has a robust manually wound 70-hour power reserve. The timepiece is one of 30 that will be constructed. The retail price is going to be approximately $900,000 US. The important thing to remember is this is a watch that is first and foremost shock resistant and effectively indestructible in the course of normal sports, polo included. Created for Argentine sports star and polo ace Pablo Micdano, the watch features signature Argentine blue on its hybrid textile and leather strap. Moreover, it's important to note the timepiece features subtle blue accents about its chapter ring with blackened coloration and luminescent indices, so a full-featured sports watch. You'll note the same in the script of Richard Mille, as well as the tone of the skeletonized hands. The watch is ethereal, the watch is airy, it's almost like a snowflake in weight, big, voluminous, and light on the wrist, while at the same time having unmistakable physical presence and a very functional purpose for those who engage in extreme sports or simply those who would wish to. This is the Richard Mille RM53-01 at SIHH 2018. Richard Mille, you're looking at the RM5301 Pablo Micdano on my 16 centimeter circumference wrist. Now you can see how a true dream watch actually fits. Two things I want to emphasize: it's light and compact. Don't think of it as a 44.5 millimeter wide watch, because lug to lug it's about 50 and it wears more compact than that. I would say if you can wear a typical modern super case 40 millimeter Rolex on an integrated solid end link bracelet, you can wear this watch with comfort. It even weighs less. Now critically, not only does the TPT carbon fiber case and mostly air-filled case reduce the mass on the wrist, but the watch has practically been mounted on a Velcro strap. So if you're Pablo Micdano, and for all practical intents and purposes, adhesion and comfort, as well as a minimum of encumbrance, are priorities, you can wear this watch comfortably and fix it securely with a clever and, let's face it, realistic Velcro fixation. This is the Richard Mille RM5301 at SIHH 2018.